Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday, y'all. Happy FPP, Faith, Purpose, Profit, what I like to call FPP Live. A time I connect with you every Monday at 7 p.m. EST to connect all things with faith, with purpose, and profit. I wonder if you realize that God created you on purpose, with purpose, and that purpose is meant to do two things. It's meant to profit the world, means that the world gains when you do what you do, and then it brings profit back to you. And so I'm excited to share insight with you as I join you every week here in FPP Live. And so I'm continuing today with a series I started about 3 weeks ago. Hey, Renata. And as you're coming in, I forgot to say, tell us, hey, tell me name, tell me where you're joining from. And can I tell you something? As you make comments here, guess what I do when you make comments? I read every single one. And then what you ask or what resonates with you is how I actually pick my topics. I pray over them. I ask guidance to support you. So I want to encourage you to make comments as you are here. Hey, Yolanda. And as you make comments, also I want to ask you to share. If I give you any value from these conversations, share it. Now, again, I don't ask you to share it because I'm trying to grow my reach. But what I am trying to grow is my purpose, my assignment. I'm trying to get to more people because that's what I'm assigned to do in this world, and you can help me do that, right? So as I hold the space for you, I'm asking you to hold the space for me. All right, so let's get this party started. So we started a series 3 weeks ago called Cultivating Your Calling. So week one, we talked about why do you want it? And we looked at the motivation behind why you do what you do, your big why. Then last week we talked about you must fight for it. Because let me tell you, just because God gives you a purpose, it's not going to be easy. And so we really looked at the motives behind you doing what you do. And so as we continue this conversation, and wait, before I do that, let me say this. If you've missed any of our conversations, I want to encourage you to go and listen to them on our podcast. That's at FPPPodcast.com. And so with that, we're going to continue in our conversation this week as we talk from part 3. You ready? You've got to cut it. Now, I want you to know, as I teach, I always build on the previous lesson. So that's why I want to encourage you to go back and watch the replays if you miss any. I see more of you joining. Hey. So with that said, here's the thing I think is so deep, is that many of us want so much in our life. However, I wonder if you realize that until you're willing to release some things, you'll never get to where you really want to go. So our foundational Bible verse, before I start going in, because I forgot to read the Bible verse, is Genesis 12:1-2. And this is taken from Abraham, story of Abraham in the Bible. And at this juncture in his story, his name is still Abram. Oh, did you know God changed his name to Abraham? So because he was willing to untie, because he was willing to cut it. Okay. So here's what God says to Abraham in Genesis 12:1-2 that kind of got his party started. Now the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. It's like, how many times did God have to tell Abraham he was going to make him great? Right? He said it four times in 4 different ways. I'm going to read it one more time. Listen to this now. Now, the Lord said to Abraham, get out of your country, from your family and from your father's house. Now, why do you think God told him to get out, to leave? See, because he had to cut what was familiar. Oh, we're going to go into that in a minute. Then he says, I want you to go to a land that I will show you. In other words, I'm not even telling you where you're going. I need you to trust me. We talked about that last week, y'all. So if you missed that, go back and listen to it. Then he says, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. Again, that's Genesis 12:1-2. Now, in my study, because you guys know I always love to study when I'm getting ready for you, right? So in my concordance, here's what it says. Abraham had to act in faith because he did not know where God was leading him. He only knew that he would obey God. He only knew that if he would obey God, God would respond by making him into a great nation, making his name great, and even using him to bring blessings to others. And I wonder if you realize that when God is stirring something up in you and wants you to shift and do something different, there's two things. One, God is going to make your name great. He put you on this earth for purpose, with purpose, but you've got to be willing to let some things go in order to go and get it. And so that's really our conversation for tonight. Because listen, if your bags are too heavy on an airplane, you know your plane will crash, right? That's why they wear our bags. So have you ever realized that there's so much baggage often that you're carrying around everywhere you go and you haven't stopped long enough to cut it? And if you're going to go after what God has for you, if you're going to go after your abundantly above all, it's going to require you to leave familiar just like Abraham did. One of my favorite quotes from Stephen Furtick is, fear is not the enemy of faith. It's actually familiarity, because we get comfortable and we want to stay in places. And so there's 3 areas you've got to assess where you might need to cut. Now, let me tell you before I tell you those 3 areas. So when I think of cutting, what comes to my mind is pruning. And listen, pruning removes dead and dying branches and stubs, allowing room for new growth. That's a definition. Pruning removes dead and any dying branches and stubs, allowing room for new growth. See, I think sometimes we get so comfortable in places that we won't cut. One needs to cut so we can make room for growth. How many of you guys have had a bad breakup? But you went through the bad breakup, you cut that tie, and then, well, let me say me. I know my last bad breakup, which was hard. I'm not going to even lie to you. I remember rolling on the floor, crying, and then I said, wait a minute, let me stop. Let me know that God would not bless me with that mess. So whatever God has for me, I've got to release that in order to get it. Do you know I met my husband the next day? And that's real talk, y'all. You know, those of you that are here with me week after week, you've heard me say that before. And the reason I always share that example is because I was blown away that God worked that fast. It's not that he's not capable. It's just, are we willing to do the work it takes to let go of what we know, to go after what we do not know? And that is exactly what God is instructing Abraham to do in Genesis 12:1 and 2. He's saying, leave everything you know, leave your family, leave your country, leave it all behind, and just go where I tell you to go. And I'm going to make your name great. So if God said to you, leave it all behind, but I'm going to make your name great, would you trust him? So those of you that said yes, let's assess where you might need to let some things go. All right. So with that, let me get into this real quick. And I really want you to take a look at, there are 3 areas that you've got to cut if you're going to go after your breathtaking future and if you're going to let go of the baggage. So the first area I want you to look at is in your environment. So there's some areas of your environment. If I had a drawing in front of me, I'd have a circle, and these are all the pieces that are in your environment. Sometimes you've got to let go of family. And what I mean by let go, I don't mean, we're going to talk about the difference between cut and untie in part 2. I'll tell you where I'm going to do that, because I'm not going to get into that right now. And my allergies are acting up, so you hear me sniffing. It's allergy season anyway. So sometimes the way you were raised, you've got to let that go. You got to cut it. Sometimes the way you were raised, so like I'll give you an example. I'm from South Central LA. I've learned things growing up like we got to rob Peter to pay Paul, you know, we broke, all the things we used to say that literally had me in this broke mentality. I had to begin to shift that environment. Now, I couldn't let my mom and dad go all the way, and my father's no longer with us, God rest his soul. But if I was going to do something new, I had to let go of what I knew to go after what I did not know. So sometimes you're limited by your environment. Some of you are limited by the friends you have around you. You know, in my first book, I talked about this concept of looking at who's on your team, because you have several different kinds of players on your team, right? And so you've got to begin to look at who's scoring points and who's playing for the opposite team. Who needs to be sitting on the bench, and somebody needs to be sitting just watching the game all the way up in the balcony because they don't need to be that close. But you've got to begin to look at what's pouring into you and what do you need to cut so that you can grow more. You know, there's been times in my life where I've had to let best friends go because I realized that they just couldn't go where I was going. I've had to let team members go. Love them doesn't mean I don't love them anymore, but sometimes you got to let team go because maybe it's time for them to go in a different direction. But you get comfortable and so you don't let it go. Some of you in relationships that aren't working, but you keep them around you. And listen, if you had a rotten piece of bread, or dare I say, let me say a banana. I'm trying to think of something that would smell really bad. Or meat. Meat would smell really bad. So if you had rotten meat sitting out, would you leave it sitting out and keep walking past it? Like, okay, yeah, it's rotten, I'm going to leave it there. Yeah, that's rotten, I'm going to leave it there. And so it begins to smell up the whole kitchen, and then it moves into other rooms in your house until it just stinks. Or some of you are living a stinky life and you don't, well, you know it, but you keep acting like it's going to get better. It's not. It's not easier to stay. It's not easier to not do anything about it. Some of you know, this is a good one. You know, I was talking to a good friend of mine. She is, and this is all environment still, she is a coach, but she's a celebrity coach. And listen, whereas the majority of my clients are in the United States, I do have some international clients. The majority of hers are opposite of mine. She coaches and teaches and speaks in other countries. She goes to events where she is the only person that speaks English. And usually, if I keep it all the way real, she's usually the only black woman present. So she and I were having lunch. This was maybe about 5 years ago. And she's also a celebrity. So, you know, I'm not going to say her name because some of you may know her. And we're having lunch. And she said, Nicole, let me run something past you. I said, okay. She said, you know, I was at an event and I was so excited because it was an event full of all white men. And I was the only, as always, it's always all white men when she's going to speak. And she's the only person of color, let alone only woman in the room. And she was so excited because she saw a black woman. And the black woman was waiting around to talk to her. So every time somebody else came up, the woman let the person go up. So she was waiting until the end. So my friend was thinking, oh my goodness, maybe I can go to dinner with her. We're in another country. We can have some sister girl chat. She was so excited. And mind you, she's been speaking for years and had never seen anybody of color, let alone a woman. Okay. So after the entire room clears out, the woman walks up to her and says, how dare you come here and take all my work from me? And here's what I said back to my friend. I said, stop. I said, what color did you have on? Did you have on bright yellow, bright red, or bright orange? And she looked at me like, how did you know? She said, I had on yellow. I said, what does she have on? Gray, blue, or black? She said she had on gray. I said, you know why I asked you that? Because she's conforming to what everybody's telling her she needs to be in that room. And listen, corporate doesn't need any more corporate. And some of you guys are trying to mold yourself to the environment you're in. I just thought of a Bible verse. Of course, my Bible's not in here, so let me pull it up on my iPad. Listen, some of you guys are so busy conforming, and you're not doing what it takes to be the disruptor that you're meant to be in that environment. Corporate doesn't need more corporate. Just like the environment you're in doesn't need more of the same. So you're going to have to get out of familiar in that environment. You might be the person that's going to make the shift. You know, even for me to talk about bankroll and Jesus in the same sentence is a disruptor to many churches, many faith-based people. But here's what God put in my spirit a couple years ago. Genesis 1:28, to be fruitful, multiply, have dominion, that he created all of us to multiply our gifts in the world. And when we do that, we multiply. And we serve more people and we are helping more people. There's that profit again. They're gaining, right? But then profit comes back to us. But here's the thing I want you to get. The more money you make, the more purpose you can do in this world. More money, more purpose. Because you can serve more people and do more good in the world. So I'm not talking about money as in the love of money is the root of all evil, right? I'm talking about the serving people. Money comes back to you as a good steward of your gift. And then that money that comes back to you so you can live. Listen, you got to eat and pay your mortgage and do all the stuff that you want to do in this world, just the same as everybody else. So why would God want you to serve and struggle? That just doesn't make any kind of sense. Does it? Doesn't to me. That's not my God. My God doesn't serve, doesn't listen. I remember when I was in my struggle years in my business, and God dropped that exact sense in my spirit. Why service and struggle should never coexist. Why would I give you a gift, bring you down on the surf to serve in that gift and want you to struggle? But because the church somehow put in my mind, many of us, that ministry is supposed to be free. God didn't say. Now, I'm not talking about prosperity where you trying to buy Mercedes and Maybachs and all this. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying be frivolous money. But what I am saying is that you should be able to live well and do good work in this world. So you've got to stop conforming to what everybody else says you should do or be and transform yourself. Now, here's a Bible verse. Romans 12:2. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So we talked about your mind, your heart in episode number 2. So again, if you missed last week, go to FPPPodcast.com and listen in. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So if you're going to cut some things, you got to stop and assess what needs to be transformed. God is a transformer. So if God's a transformer, then hello, he's always cutting something. If God created every living tree, every living bush, everything that's out there, and all that has to be pruned. What makes you think that there are times that you've got to cut some things back in order to grow more? Okay? I need you to get that. The greatest threat to your breathtaking future is is you trying to stay in what's comfortable, what's familiar. So I want you to do an environment check, right? I need you to take time to assess, number one, your family, and what do you need to shift around that? Listen, if my husband didn't get my business, well, first of all, he wouldn't be my husband. Some of y'all need to cut that, right? You shouldn't have to just be a part of a little piece of yourself to be in a relationship with somebody. But my mother for years used to call me a psychiatrist, so I just let it go. I stopped trying to explain to her what I do. I have not gone to medical school. I can't prescribe a drug, but for some reason my mother wanted to tell everybody I was a psychiatrist, so I just let her have it. Now I believe she says it right, but I cut my tie to what she was saying. Do you get that? I think we get so emotionally involved and we want to control everything when the only person you can control is you. And what you allow yourself to be around and what you allow to be poured into your soul. I remember my mom and dad were going through a divorce, and I remember my mother would be talking about my dad, and I go, I love you. That's my daddy. Find a girlfriend. You're not talking to me about my daddy. Because I had to really be mindful of what she's putting in me about my dad, but then maybe hate my dad. And their relationship was different than my relationship. Oh, he did some horrible things to her, but that was their relationship, not my business. Well, it kind of was my business, but not really. And I told her, I didn't choose him. You did. So don't be mad at me that that's my daddy. That's your fault. But I don't want you to talk to me about him. So I need you to really be willing to be a disruptor. What do you need and what do you not need? Even some of you are in jobs where your boss just doesn't appreciate your greatness. Why are you there? Are you there because it's your investor and it's investing in you starting your purpose-focused business? Then be clear. I'm not going to be here for long. I remember when I was at a job I hated. I was clear. I'm staying here until I get my business profitable and then I'm out. And that's exactly what happened. But you've also got to not let them seep into your soul. If you grew up in a neighborhood that you had a different mindset growing up, I need you to assess that and see how you're carrying it with you into this place. I want you to look at it, your family, your friends, your neighborhood, all the things that created you up until this point. And it was great and it served you well. But now many of you need something different and you're stuck in yesterday when God has tomorrow waiting for you. So number one, do an environment check. And you know what's interesting is as I look down it's 3 E's, by the way, the 3 E's you need to assess to look at where you need to cut. Okay. So I really want you to get this. As you understand that sometimes the environment you're in is not conducive to your growth. Listen, when a newborn baby comes into this world, they don't let the newborn baby into the atmosphere. They create their own atmosphere to incubate that baby. Many of you, the reason your business is not growing is you are not in the right environment to grow it. And it will never grow. How do I know? Because it took me 17 years to even understand that. Many of you know I've been doing this 28 years. In September, it'll be 29 years that I've been doing this work. It took me 17 years to make a profit. You know why? Because I was incubating my baby, my purpose in the wrong environment. So look at what's around you and look at what you might need to untie. And I'm going to give you some strategies to untie. Don't worry. Or cut, right? Number 2, the next area you need to cut in is expectations. Woo! And by the way, each area gets bigger. So first is environment. Second is looking at expectations. Number 1, the expectations of other people that they put on you. See, 9 times out of 10, when people put expectations on you, that's none of your business. That's their business. But you take it on as your own. You did that. Or maybe somebody violated you or did harm to you. And then people expect you to stay in a certain place because you went through that. Or maybe you think you should. You did that. So you got to, number 1, look at the parameters you're putting on yourself. Sometimes you're saying what you can't do when God is not an I can't kind of God, but you're being an I can't kind of person. When you say what you can't. See, if you say you can't, you won't. But if you say you will, then you will. And you can. But you put that expectation on yourself when you start saying things like, I'm broke. Oh, no, I'm not ever saying I'm broke. I'm not saying I don't have it in my budget at the moment. I'm not claiming long term that I won't have this money. I'm claiming for this moment. I'm expecting it to come. So what expectations are people putting on you? You know, I have a client who is now a reporter on a huge network. I'm not going to say where, right? And for years, she didn't go into journalism because her family expected her to go to law school. So what did she do? She went to law school. She matriculated to law school, and then she got all the way up to then get an offer to be a partner at her law firm. And as an African-American woman, to get an offer to be a partner is huge. And she said, I had a choice to go up or go out. What did she choose? She chose to let go of expectation, perception, what everybody else said, and she went after the desire of her heart, which now she is on huge platforms that you watch every day because she said yes. She covered the Obamas in the White House. She was on their journalism staff. But had she not said yes to her gift, her calling, the things she knew she was purposed to do, she'd been living into somebody else's definition of her life instead of her picking up a pen and writing it herself. You become the author of the definition of your life and stop letting other people put it on you. And then some of you guys are putting expectations on yourself that aren't realistic. Many of you are saying, I'm going to have a 6-figure business in a year, but you're just starting and you don't have any strategy. So how are you going to do that? That's not real. Some of you guys are saying, like, I'm going to quit my job in a year. But what plan do you have to quit your job? Listen, God does tell us to step on faith, but he don't tell you to have stupid faith. He tells you to have wise faith. So don't put that on God when you talk about I'm stepping out on faith, but you do stuff and it's not strategic. So you put unfair expectations on you and you put unfair expectations on God. Look, Ilana just said, the power of life and death is in the tongue. The things we say to ourselves. Right. So listen, I said this last episode, what you think about, you bring about. And even what you talk about, you bring about. So I want you to look at the expectations you have. And dare I say the expectations you have on God. Listen, don't limit God's ability to bless you. But when you think a small God, then God will be small. If you think, okay, God might do a little something, then he's going to do a little something. But if you think God's going to do abundantly above all I could ask or think, put the expectation and let God rise to the occasion. Trust him like Abraham did. God said, leave everything you know. And for many of you, your job is no longer big enough for your gift. And you have this stirring inside of you to do something or be something different, but you won't do it because you want to sit in comfort. Instead of allowing God to blow your expectations. The last thing I want to talk about with expectation, and this is in alignment with what I just said, I think for many of us, this was me, by the way, and everything I'm saying to you, I'm not pointing a finger. I can point it back at me because everything I'm saying, I went through. I learned a lesson and I'm happy to hold the space so that it won't take you as long as it took me to get it. But one of the biggest things we've got to do with expectations is let go of how. So when I say this, I always like to use this example. You know, when I go to McDonald's on one of my cheat days, I hope my trainer's not watching this right now, but I love me a good filet of fish sometimes, right? So when I go to McDonald's, I drive up to the drive-up window and I place my order. And I say, hi, yeah, I'd like a filet of fish, right? You want fries? That? No, just the fish. And can I get a water on the side? Because I'm trying to be good. Sometimes I also can I get apples instead of the fries, you know, trying to be good, right? Every now and then I do get the fries. Let me not lie, okay? So once I place my order, I go straight to the second window to pick it up. I wonder if they have the special sauce today. I wonder if they have filet fish. I wonder if they have the bread today. I don't think about any of that. But many of us do that when we pray and ask God for something, then we're trying to figure out how. We're trying to tell God how we want him to do it. The nerve. If God's going to do exceedingly abundantly above all you could ask or think, then you're not going to have any idea how he's going to do it. But you're going to put expectations on God. And say, hey, you know, I hope you have that special sauce today. Hey, you know, do you have that bun today that's already on the bread, already on the sandwich? Do you have that cheese you already put on it? No, you just drive up like Abraham did. He left everything behind. He placed his order and drove up to the window to receive it. So many of you need to let go of expectation, let go of how you think it's supposed to look. Listen, to be honest with you, my husband did not look anything like I thought he was going to look. He's 12 years older than me. You can probably hear me. He has 2 kids. And he lived all the way across country when I met him. But everything else he was exactly what I know God wanted in a man for me. He got me in ways that no other man ever got me. He loves God as much as I do. Let me tell you something. My husband celebrates my business. I call him my see no no because he thinks he works here. He probably can hear me. But he celebrates me. He applauds me. This past weekend, matter of fact, I got my honorary doctorate degree. Well, my husband has a PhD. He got a PhD. He's a physicist. Okay, I'm only sharing that with you because imagine a black man getting a PhD in physics. Just that by itself is like, right? And you would think, because I got an honorary degree, which people think I didn't do any work, baby, I've been doing this 28 years. I put in the work. But he was more excited about my degree than me. As I was sitting, because I attended my ceremony online, because I had a speaking event on Friday. He was so excited. He was sitting right next to me. He was like, I don't want to be on camera. He was texting people and calling people. And I'm sharing that with you because had I said he doesn't look like I think he should look because of my expectations, I would have missed one of the biggest blessings of my life. Many of you guys need to let go of how. I didn't meet my husband until I was 34. And my friends were married and many divorced by then. I thought my how was 23. I'm going to have 3 kids. But God has different plans for you. And when you can let go of your expectation and let go of everything you already know to go after what you do not know, listen, when I met my husband and he asked me to marry him and that meant I had to move, I was scared. I'm going to be honest with you. And I remember this like it was yesterday. So back then I had a for-profit and a non-profit. So I thought I'm going to call each of my board members individually and they're each going to tell me, no, I can't move. So I'm going to have to tell him I can't move and I can't marry you. Right? Doesn't make sense, I know. So I called each one of them and each of them was excited I was engaged and said, you know that you are called to go beyond California. So I'm so excited for you. Well, can you give me some of that excitement? Because I was scared. I have never lived anywhere outside of California. I've traveled places. I'm from LA. I went to school in San Diego, okay, 2 hours away. And now I'm moving all the way clear across country. I moved to Milwaukee first. Then we moved to Boston. Then we moved here. I live in the DMV area now. But the point I'm making is this. I didn't see how I was going to continue my business there. I didn't see how God was going to expand my territory. But I realized that God was moving me out of California. Do you know why? Because California had gotten comfortable for me. I had contacts, I had girlfriends, I had all these things that were going, and God wanted more from me, but he had to move me out of comfort and out of everything I knew for me to grow in a different place, in a different way. And many of you, the reason your business won't grow is because you won't come out of comfort. You sit in expectation. You're expecting it to look this way when God wants it to look this way. So that's the first 2 steps. The third step is emotion. And because that's a whole conversation in and of itself, I'm going to share that with you in part 2. Now, those of you that don't join me in my FPP breakfast every Tuesday morning, I'm going to drill deep in part 2 because there's some things you need to cut and there's some things you need to untie. What's the difference? We're going to go in the morning. So what I do is on Monday night, I start this conversation in FPP Live and we drill deeper in our Clubhouse on Tuesday morning. The other thing I love about Clubhouse is I get to hear you. So on these nights, I see your comments. Hey, Erica, and I see Yolanda, and I think I saw Destiny here somewhere. I get to see your comments here on Monday night, but I get to hear your voice on Tuesday morning. So 8:30 a.m. EST, I'm live with you in Clubhouse. I'm going to walk you through the third area, and I'm going to really help you see another aspect is, do you cut or do you untie? And what's the difference? And Erica says, that's good. Oops. That's good. Yes, in the previous season, I forced myself to move out of comfort. Right. But that's every season. Every season, every season, you should be forcing yourself to come out of comfort. Because let me tell you something. Life grows in stages and seasons, just like in a year. We have 4 seasons in a year. So you don't go through being uncomfortable one time. Listen, many of you, I'm going to end on this. I always talk about there is a matriculation in purpose, right? And so just like we go through the education system, we matriculate through education, kindergarten, first grade, some of y'all have been with me, you've heard me talk about this. Elementary, then junior high, then high school, and some of us going to college and grad school and PhDs and all that fun stuff. And our purpose matriculates the same way, but the only difference is God does not tell us. So we don't know the end from the beginning. So he says things like, I need you to leave. I need you to move. I know God does that to test you, to see if you're going to do exactly what he says before he blesses you. Listen, every time I've done something afraid, every time I've done it, knees knocking, teeth chattering, God has blessed me abundantly above all I could ask or think. And so the goal of this series is to give you tools, because here's the thing I know. If you're going to cultivate your calling, your purpose, your gift, the thing that God created you to do in this world, oh, it's going to be uncomfortable. Listen, a diamond doesn't shine unless it goes through the fire. Because you know a diamond is a coal first, right? It's got to be burned first. And some of you guys are trying to avoid being burned. Yeah, no, that ain't happening, right? Hey, Michelle. So with that said, y'all, that was part one of our conversation. You know I got way more for you tomorrow. So again, I want to encourage you to join me. Pushing the wrong button, FPPBreakfast.com is where I'll be tomorrow morning. Clubhouse, 8:30 a.m. EST, 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes, and we will go in. I love it, y'all. Nikki says, same here. Every single time. Terrified, but always worth it. Right. But here's the thing. God doesn't show you. He shows you what the end is going to look like, but then you go through the middle passage. You know, all of us African-American folks, you know our people died in the middle passage. This is the place that most people quit. This is why only a few people are truly, really blessed in this world, because they quit in the middle. So my goal in cultivating your process is to give you tools to not quit in the middle, to stay in the work, to not give up, to see God do what God promised. So with that, I look forward to digging into our conversation more tomorrow morning. It's always my honor and privilege to hold this space with you. Again, 8:30 a.m. EST. We're going to go through part 3 of the 3 areas you need to assess in order to understand what you've got to cut. I'll see you in the morning, y'all. Bye.